I'm going to say something in Spanish. And there's a point to what I'm saying. When I was learning Spanish, you know, one of the toughest things was learning to roll the R's. Because I had a hard time with that. You know, when you say words like arroz, you got to be able to say r. You got to do the arroz. So, otherwise you won't get any rice. You know, that's the word for rice, arroz. So you have to learn to roll those R's. And there's this tongue twister in Spanish. And this is how it goes, if I remember it correctly. There are different variations on this, but this is one I remember. It goes something like this. R con R cigarro, R con R carril. Rápido corren los carros de ferrocarril. The point is that you learn to roll those R's by doing that. But the thing is, it's about language. And it's about culture. And it's about something else. You know, I'm not here to deceive or trick anybody by getting you to think I'm giving you a Spanish lesson. The point is that I learned how to speak Spanish. I was looking at some of the books I used that I practiced with and phrases I learned when I was working over at Cook County Hospital. I was working as a volunteer. I used to volunteer. First, I used to volunteer 2 times a week. And then I went down to once a week. Every Wednesday, I used to go over there and do volunteer translations. And it's interesting, you know, you learn something. You learn a language, but when you learn that language, it becomes yours. You know, I don't feel like it's a foreign thing to me. Speaking Spanish is not foreign to me. And you know, if you go a place enough times, if you visit a country or you get close to certain people, you don't see them as foreign anymore. You know, I don't look at people from other countries as foreigners. I know that's officially what they are. I know that officially in the way we're supposed to look at it, like someone from China is foreign, someone from Mexico is foreign. I don't see that because to me that's separating people. You know, I always have this ideal in my mind, and it worked. It was actually a solution to a problem when I used to suffer from anxiety attacks. Because there was a time when I used to suffer from anxiety attacks, and I couldn't go more than 2 blocks away from my house. I got to a point where I couldn't go 2 blocks away from home. You know, and so it was hard for me to get out. And I learned basically that in order to overcome the fear of being away from home or being away from your safe place is learn the simple fact that you carry the safe place right here. Home is really a mental construct. You know, I was talking about mental constructs before. But that's what home is. So when I'm in Japan, and I'm in my hotel room, and I'm like 6,000 miles away from home, I'm really not 6,000 miles away from home. Home is right here. When I'm in Mexico, I'm home. When I'm in Paris, when I'm in France, I'm home. When I'm in England, I'm home. When I was in Spain, that was home. When I crossed over into Morocco, that was home. See, it's really a mental construct. It worked. I was talking on the other tape about government by consent of the people, or the social contract. Well, the social contract is basically a mental construct. That's all it is. That was the whole thing that John Locke was talking about. Now, John Locke, back in those days, back in the 1600s, I think he wrote that like 16 something. I don't remember the exact year. It was 100 years before the U.S. Constitution was written. And I would suggest to anybody that you read John Locke's philosophical thing about government. It's very interesting. You'll find it fascinating because you'll notice the similarities between what he said and the way the Constitution is written. It's like, wow, it's almost word for word what the Constitution says. Well, the people who wrote the Constitution got that ideal from John Locke. The thing is that the government is a mental construct, and so is God, and so is so many other things. But the thing is, we don't really question that. We don't argue about it too much, about the mental constructs, as long as they work. The real test of those things is, do they work? It's like what basically what William James' pragmatism thing is. The truth of an ideal is, does it work? It was actually somebody else. It wasn't William James who said that, but another pragmatist who said that. Basically, the truth of an ideal is, does it work? So the question about whether or not there's a God isn't so much whether or not you can see God in a microscope or through a telescope or through some type of test in a chemistry lab to see if there's God. But the question is, does the ideal of God work? Some people may say to themselves, well, the ideal of God doesn't work for me. Okay, then that's your truth. And other people say the ideal of God works for me. Okay, then that's your truth. And that would fit in with something else that William James talked about, the multiverse. That basically, each and every one of us has our own subjective view of the world, and what works for you may not work for somebody else, and that's the truth for you. But it's not the truth for somebody else. So I think of God as something that works for me. Believing in God works for me. It may not work for somebody else, and I don't try to push things on people. That's one thing. Because to me, the idea of pushing things on people doesn't work for me. What works for me is the idea of freedom. You know, I live my life a certain way, and hopefully that will be an example for other people. But if that works, fine. If it doesn't, then that's okay too. I don't worry about stuff like that. You know, it's just, you have to do what works for you. And I follow what works for me. I don't try to push things on people. That's one thing that you always know. Anybody who knows me and gets to live with me and be friends with me, the truth of the matter is that you'll discover that I don't push my ideals on anybody. I just put them out there, and you're free to make a choice. You can either accept what I'm saying, or you can say, well, I don't accept that, and that's it. That's all. You know, freedom is what matters to me. That also is a mental construct. As Einstein said, that freedom is basically a myth. It's just what we think. It's what we imagine. If we imagine we're free, if we think we're free, we feel free. And if you imagine that someone's holding you back, you feel like you're being held back. And that's basically the main point I want to make.